and you're eating your soup.
We have yours on too with the amount of pub you're giving this man recently. What's going on? Where's yours, huh?
You know what? Do I have it here?
Wait,
I'm in my home. I'm in my studio in my house, and they set one, but I think I took it to the off. Yeah, I have that actually. But hey, I'm pumping what needs to be pumped. Come on, you know how this goes.
Yeah. Man, I feel left out.
Absolutely do. I get it. Your team Chicharito right now. Plus, what is it? 15.5 goals. You took the over?
I took the over. Yeah. I put the 15.5 last year at the under, but I'll take the over this year.
So you're playing with house money at this point.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't make very much money last year on Chicharito, but
the only person that made money last year was Chicharito. Holy moly.
Exactly. And lots of it, my man. Lots of it.
He wasn't struggling. Gordo, what are you doing? You taking the over on that 15.5?
Yeah, I'll take that.
You want me to sell you on it, Gordo? Can I sell you on it for a second?
No, I think he's a goal scorer. I think he's, the interview that he gave the other night, dude, it actually got me. I'm not going to lie.
The one after the game?
Yeah. I loved every minute of it. I mean, it's what I want to see. It's what I want to see from a guy that's making that money. I'm not even going to lie. Like there's a lot of pressure, dude, whether it doesn't matter how successful he's been. Doesn't matter how much money he has.
Say it though, Gordo. There's a train of thought with the DP that comes in Major League Soccer amongst the players, right? Like you're okay with them making that money if they're appreciative of what's going on. Because oftentimes we've all been in the locker room and you're like, that guy doesn't give a shit.
Totally.
And it gets at the rest of the players who are scraping by, living check to check, at least in our times, right? In our times, the money wasn't where it is today. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. And
wait, real quick. Sell me on the over, because honestly, I'm teetering a little bit on the under. Sell me on it.
So you guys saw last year, Guillermo Barros Escoloto's team. They were a train wreck. I mean, Zlatan on that team did everything he could, and it was only Zlatan. Like it was like a miracle that you had this physical specimen, and he did what he wanted with defenders. Chicharito's not that player. You can't just dump the ball to him and expect him to do something. He's not going to beat players on the dribble. He's not going to create his own space, with the ball at his feet. He's very, very good with his off the ball movement, but he needs that service. Last year, he didn't get it. You had all kinds of things going on where there were players that, quite frankly, didn't step up, weren't there for him. Christian Pavone and him never got on the same page. I forgot the player who was there, his name, Katai maybe, but he had that thing with his wife in the race. Yeah, he was booted out. I thought he was going to be maybe one of the players that could better service him. Yeah. Right. So now you get Greg Vanney, and if you guys know Greg Vanney, it's system. Greg Vanney will drill that into you. I was his teammate when we were players. I was his player when he was my coach towards the end of my career. And they will do.
You were a part owner with him in Cats, right? In that philosophy too.
Yeah. I tell you what, I wish I would have got in on the ground floor. They're flying now. But I'm being serious. You see what he does with the team, and he will drill an hour worth of video a day into you, like video session. And he wants your role to be clear, and he wants the patterns to be crisp and to make sense. And he wants you to understand how they will progress throughout the field. And if you're a forward in that system, it will be very easy. Your job, it'll be very defined. And if you're Chicharito, you don't need to try to be more than you are, because if Chicharito isn't scoring, he's not doing much for you. So he needs to be scoring goals. I think Greg understands that. And you can see the moments where he wasn't good versus Miami, it's because you're asking him to do something that's not him. I mean, he had a couple bad first touches in the box, and he tried blaming it like on O'Neal Fisher or another player. I
remember that play in particular.
Yeah, exactly. As a right back, I'm sure you remember exactly. You'd be like, what are you talking about? But to the naked eye, they'd be like, Chicharito played a great ball, and that guy didn't understand.
Yeah, what an idiot. It's crazy. The more you talk about Chicharito, I didn't realize how similar my game was to his. I feel like you're describing me.
You don't give yourself enough credit, man. You had some nice feet for such a big man. I'm gonna be honest.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Gordo gives himself plenty of credit. Get out of here.
Listen, let the man
there are daily affirmations going on 24 times a day.
Let the man speak.
Yeah.
Herc, what have you been up to, dude? How do you like this? How do you like this new role as you've gone into media? I mean, you've you've obviously thrived in it, and taken on that kind of, been that representative on the Latino side of U.S. soccer. You've done a phenomenal job. Like, how do you like this new career of yours?
It's a lot easier to talk about shit than to do shit. That's what I've realized. So this is a lot easier on my body. My body towards the end was not good, giving out on me. Like I got the knee of an 80-year-old. So on that end, I'm much more appreciative to where I'm at now. But it's a lot of work, man. Like I'll be honest. People see like a 3-minute clip and they don't realize like the hour or two that go into it on so many different fronts. And I appreciate that comment about the Latino representative. But being in this kind of Mexican-American role, seeing both sides, it's funny because in the States, and I'm not too sure because with the pandemic and everything's gone on, the national team's been on break. I haven't been on air studio-wise as much. Usually we have the U.S. men's national team games at ESPN, and, I'll go to Nashville and I'll be with Casey and I'll be with, Taylor and the guys. And we haven't had studio. So that part's been missing. So I always kind of ask myself, how am I viewed on this side? But on the Spanish side, I'm on air 5 days a week. And by default, I'm like the MLS defender, the U.S. men's national team, like mascot to them. It's like anything that happens, whether I'm directly involved or not, I'm going to hear about it on social media. And it's crazy how it's taken on this persona of its own. So I'm like two different people in the media world. And it's kind of, at least on my end, fascinating to see how the sectors respond, but it's been fun. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun.
How much soccer are you watching on a weekly basis? Just curious.
Too much, Sal.
That's part of your job. I mean, it's basically your job.
Not just that. So I do a weekly show in Spanish called Ahora Nunca. It's an hour-long show every day, and we do all sports. I'm one of the two hosts. So I've had to learn about MMA. I've had to learn more about basketball, a little bit more about football, just to try to get by and sound like an authoritative voice on it, even though your takes are short and they don't have to be hot takes, but they've got to be at least concise and somewhat knowledgeable, even though it is entertainment. But you guys are parents, man. Like I can't tell my wife, like, hey, I can't give the kids a bath today. I got to go watch, Chivas Monterrey, or I got to go watch LA versus Inter Miami. No, I mean, Dan, we tried scheduling this and we had to literally move it like 3 or 4 times. Like, look, man, I wish I could do this day, but if I tell my wife I'm missing this, she's gonna cut me in, where
it's actually a miracle that all 4 of us are at the same time on a Wednesday night.
So there's a lot of DVRing going on, and I try to get as much as I can in when the kids go to bed and my wife goes to bed. So from 10 on at night to 10 to 1 a.m. my work gets done, and then about 7 a.m. the next morning, it starts with the kids. So that's how it is.
How do you deal with?
There are bosses and bosses, right?
That's true.
And I know you guys have seen. Go ahead.
The interesting thing for me is, how do you feel about, because you're paid to give your opinion, right? And your opinion but being controversial is better than agreeing with everybody, right? And you gotta have your own thoughts. And so I'm interested how you've dealt with that. Have you had a lot of criticisms of current players on things you've said? And even to go in further with that, I want to get into the recent beef with like Taylor Twellman and
wow,
Josie.
I honestly thought you were going to ask me about that right now. I don't know why I felt that from you. Like,
because you know me, buddy.
When you mentioned Taylor Twellman's name,
going.
when you mentioned his name and then you playing at Toronto, it all kind of came in my head as well.
Right. Yeah. I think that's how it works. You know so I'll share a little story with you. So when I first came into this business, if you guys watch ESPN FC, you'll recognize some of the guys I'll tell you about, like Stevie Nicol. We've all played against his teams, New England team, and he's such a character. But then there's another Scottish guy named Craig Burley, and Craig kind of gave me a piece of advice without actually giving me a piece of advice. He kind of gave me like a lesson. It's you've got to put that part of your career in the past, because it's going to do you no good in the next phase of your career. You can't think I'm going to step on toes and this is going to be bad, because the audience, the person, the viewer, they're going to recognize, they're going to smell the BS. So you have to be as honest as you can. You don't have to insult anybody. He didn't say it that way. He was just, and more than he was telling me.
I remember that. I remember that interview. That was on air. I watched that, and you didn't. I could tell you didn't want to say something about a player, and I forget what it was. And
multiple players.
And
he was trying to call the U.S. men's national team mediocre, and I was, because I believed in my heart at the time they're not mediocre. They're just going through a bad stretch. But it's hard to argue with somebody when you see what happened in that cycle and how things went down. Even though truly, if you ask me, the whole thing was a fiasco, and what happened, it happened. But certain things throughout that process had taught me, he's right. And I remember that process. We're in Costa Rica, and Colorado. I'm sorry, we're not in Costa Rica. We're in Harrison, New Jersey, Red Bull Arena, and we're gonna do Costa Rica versus the U.S. men's national team. It was the game they end up losing at home, the second game of the Hex, I believe, or no.
I don't know if they lost. Second time they played Costa Rica and they lost.
Second time, you're right, because the first game was in San Jose. You're correct about that. And the week before, Tim Howard, who I always got along with at the national team, had this blunder where somebody in Colorado passed the ball back to him, and Tim was in an awkward position where it was a very difficult pass, and literally you had to use your hands to stop it, but they would have called him for a foul, and he decided not to, and he kind of opened his body up and dove with it with his leg, and it ended up being an own goal. So on FC, I was on air that day with them, and they're having a laugh, and I didn't really partake in the laugh, but I didn't defend it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't defend it, and I didn't make much of it. I was trying to not step on toes. I was like, well, I know Tim, I'm not going to, rag on him right now. In Harrison, New Jersey, the night before, the guys do kind of a run through of what is the stadium, the grounds, the 45-minute to an hour training session, something light. Tim kind of comes next to me, and, I'm expecting, a big hug from Timmy and whatnot. And he was cordial, but he was just like, what do you want me to do, Herc? Ball went by, and he just kept repeating it. And I was like, what is he talking about?
Ball went by, Herc.
Yeah, I was like, what is he going? What's going on right now? And I was like scratching my head, like, ball went by. And then I'm piecing it together later on because it was really awkward, encounter. I'm like, he's talking about this. He watched FC. So things like that happen, and you have to be as honest as you can in the moment. But also, like Gordo said, you can tell Gordo in that moment, that segment, I'm trying not to speak ill of players that I played with for many years, whether it's club level or national team level, and do right by them. But in doing so, and not just being honest about that certain occasion, I'm being dishonest with the viewer. So I had to find like a happy medium, a little balance there.
I'm sure it gets a little easier when you haven't had that personal friendship and team, been so close to somebody as a teammate, right?
But you guys know, you guys have been to, MLS functions, and you're going to see the people. You're going to see this. Yeah. This is a small circle. You're going to see these people. It's a lot easier for me to do it when I'm doing the Liga MX because I'm not going to see these guys, probably ever, maybe once, when I'm in these MLS circle or national team circles, I'm going to see these guys a lot. And going to Twellman and Josie, what you were talking about, I had no idea where that came from. You'd have to ask Josie to have his reasons. You'd have to ask Taylor. Nobody likes being criticized. Nobody likes, sometimes when they see something on TV and they don't agree with it. I have no idea what that is about. Honestly, Josie's one of my good teammates that I've had throughout my career. He's such a good guy. And, Taylor here, he's one of the few guys that will say something in our world. So, you put two strong personalities together and, that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Has Taylor ever said anything in the past about him, though? I can't recall. I feel like he's always, if anything, stuck up for him, for being the number 9 that the national team's kind of needed.
Once or twice, I'm sure Taylor said something about Josie, like he said something about probably every other player in the pool, or any other commentator has said about, players they commentate on. You'd have to ask Josie what he took exception to. That's a real tough one for me there. Because if I'd be speculating on what I actually think it was, he was upset about. But yeah, that's a tough one because there were some strong words said, and that one's a tough one.
Yeah.
Dude, there was some strong language put out there. Absolutely. I think that's an understatement. And I think that it was a lot bigger. And I always think that Twitter beef is the most ridiculous place to actually have any type of discussion or conversation, which was also something I thought kind of interesting because Josie has been such an outspoken positive force for the national team and, American players, youth players, like this whole idea of the dream realized, right? Like he's done it all. And Taylor has been that guy that you're speaking about in terms of willing to speak out and also has, the background to be able to jump in and comment on an awful lot, which, Herc, you're talking about that. I think that's spot on. I think when it comes from a place of experience, it's a lot easier, I think, to be critical because you have
Right.
some skin in the game. You've witnessed it. You've been a part of it. You're able to comment on it, but it's still, to your point, it's tough to ever hear critical feedback. That's not easy.
Right.
But I also thought like between the two of them, because of their background, I thought at some point we would have seen something more than like 3 tweets, than these inflammatory tweets that really go nowhere. They take it nowhere, but it's also, I don't know, maybe it's just the society where Josie felt like he needed to have a pop and that was that. And then everybody moves on.
I feel like
I will
Taylor
say
let
this
it go
about
a little
Josie.
bit.
Yeah, I will say this about Josie. He's not the type to just scream wolf. Like I know Josie's character and he's a good dude, and I don't know Taylor as well as I know Josie, but Taylor's never been the guy to me within the company to kind of
No, that wasn't
blatantly
just
spit lies.
That was definitely not, to your point, Herc. It wasn't like I don't like what he said right now. It was that's
something
been
lingered.
up.
Yeah.
That's been boiling up for a while.
I'd be doing an injustice if I tried to properly analyze that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I think you should do it justice though and get the two of them on your show.
You should.
Yeah, could you imagine me, Taylor Twellman, Sebastian Salazar, and Josie Altidore trying to do 35 odd minutes, one like catered subject? It'd go off in tangents and it would do nobody any good.
Perfect though. You got the whole spectrum of human color there. I think everybody's represented. You're okay. We got it. Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, and you're probably touching upon some things that I think people should hear. And I've had this conversation with Stu Holden. Stu Holden, I forget what really happened, but something happened to the effect where there was something about race called out in social media, and Stu Holden wanted to gather because I think something he said may have came across wrong or somebody or something. I don't recall. Maybe Grant Wall was involved as well. Stu wanted to organize kind of a round table, and he wanted to get guys like Moadu, like myself, like Josie, like Grant himself, maybe Martino, if memory serves me correct, and do sort of a round table because there are things within our certain world that maybe you guys won't understand from your upbringing towards mine. Maybe I don't know how Gordo grew up, or other people don't realize. There's certain things that we can have a discussion about and maybe open some eyes. And I think a lot of that's needed, especially today, because these are crazy times. And I had this discussion the other day. You guys know Ugo Ihemelu. A lot of you guys have played with Ugo. I know Gargs and Gordo played with Ugo. Yeah. He's like my best friend. And when Gargan brought up the possibility of me coming on the pod, he was visiting this weekend or that weekend from Costa Rica, and I told him about it, and he just laughed. He's like, "Man, the stories about like us, either in Colorado or with Gordo in LA, and a lot of things came flashing back." And it was like, could you imagine, like if social media was around back in our day, all the dumb things we did, all the dumb things we talked about. So this is kind of like that to me. It's people don't know until they know, and there's an opportunity to let some people know maybe what a certain sector has to deal with, and maybe how they've had it difficult or different, and what we could do better going forward.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is there needs to be more discussion, and it takes individuals like yourself, individuals like this, this setting, which we could all be better with, but it's still taking steps, right? It's taking steps to put those conversations together, because it's an ongoing conversation. It doesn't stop. It's not going to stop.
Yeah,
here.
as you guys can tell, I'm a little uncomfortable talking about Josie, who I consider like a good teammate friend, and Taylor, who is a colleague of mine. Trying to dissect that.
That's an interesting spot for you, for sure. I want to touch on your Mexican American heritage and soccer that kind of falls into that. So I'll put you on the spot here. If you are a 17-year-old right now in today, where are you going to play? Are you playing for Mexico or are you playing for the United States?
That's me personally. It was always an easy decision for me. And Gordo knew me when I was like 21, 22. And you can tell kind of my personality and my upbringing and my education or lack thereof and whatnot, So it was always a very easy decision for me. I actually had the opportunity in 2005. I had a pretty good year with LA. And I got noticed by the Mexican national. They had a, I believe it was Pan American Games. And I was contacted by the Mexican Federation with the possibility of me maybe playing in that age group. And they asked about my passport. At the time, I didn't have my passport, but I had such a good season, that it wasn't on my mind. I'm thinking U.S. men's full national team. So that never crept in my psyche. But if all things are equal, and I'm saying all things are equal because as a dual citizen, whether you're Mexican American or whatever, German American, you can have equal love for like two different cultures. Forget the countries for a second, but cultures, because I was born in the States, grew up in the States. I had very little recollection of what Mexico was unless I'd go visit somebody or something, or do something there. So it's more the culture, the upbringing, the family, the customs, etc. That's a strong, emotional tie, and you can feel that for another country. So if all things are even, well, then other things come into play. Okay, where's my best opportunity? Where do I feel I fit in? Playing wise, as a person, where do I see myself 10 years from now? Longevity, all these different factors. But for me, it was never an issue. I knew where I wanted to play if they had me.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah. Go ahead, Sal.
Sorry, let me ask one more. And maybe I didn't frame that the right way. Maybe I didn't frame that question because you obviously played for the U.S. and I would expect you to pick the U.S. 10 times out of 10. So what I'm asking is, I guess in today's, today as a 17-year-old, now that U.S. soccer I think has taken some pretty significant strides here. And there is really a border war here with these young dual citizens. How do they make the decision? Like how are they?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because there are a lot of different stories and tales of like the players that have jumped ship that have played in the U.S. men's youth national team. And ended up going to play for Mexico, but then don't play. So, U.S. soccer is like, well, in the end, we were right. They weren't very good. They didn't, explode. But I could tell you said border war, and it's funny you say that, but that's exactly what it's like. I remember Paul Arriola, telling me when he was with the Galaxy, I think he was like 15 years old, his first go with the Galaxy. They had agents who would peek over the fence waiting for these young kids to come out and, literally like, hey, introduce themselves and try to sign these kids, try to get these kids already kind of to go with them. And you see what has happened with the Jonathan Gonzalez of the world, what has happened now with, Efrain Alvarez, and Efrain's a very talented player. And, you're talking about two full national team coaches, not picking up the phone and like having a conversation with them, but bringing in the camp and being like, listen, you're in our plans and we'd like to, have you see what this is about. That's overwhelming, especially when, and I can tell you from Efra's perspective, I know his dad is probably putting a lot of pressure for him to play with Mexico. I've seen some of the things he said. I've read some of the quotes and his father is still very much ingrained with what is Mexican culture. And even though he's in the States now, and that's, you got to understand what being a Mexican footballer is. There is no Hollywood. There is no NFL. There is no NBA. There is no NHL. None of these sports. The only thing that matters is football, is soccer. So from the time you're able to walk, you're kicking a soccer ball. It's part of the culture there. And it's such an important thing. It's what you do. I mean, cities are paralyzed during game time. You idolize your local club's players. It's from you're old enough to run. You go into the academy, and if you're fortunate enough to make it, you're like the pride of your family. And some of these kids are 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're already head of the households because of the income they have and what the responsibility they have. So it's such a different psyche. And yes, the US has gotten better, but there's still so much, such a long way to go. Sal, you have Landon as a coach, and I'll tell you what, Landon's not Latino, but if Landon, because of the respect the Mexican just public in general has for him, was a liaison for US soccer and picked up the phone and called a Jonathan Gonzalez and spoke to his father or Jonathan Gonzalez himself about the possibility of staying with the US, that just carries so much weight, Jose Torres, certain Michael Orozco, certain guys who have been there, done that, Omar Gonzalez, just have common ground with these people. But no, you send Thomas Rongen, and Thomas Rongen lies about going to Jonathan Gonzalez's house, lied to the extent where Jonathan Gonzalez's dad reaches out to ESPN to speak to me specifically. He's like, I don't know who this guy is. He's never set foot in my house. They felt wanted and important somewhere else. So yeah, we're making inroads, and I can't deny it. Greg Berhalter has done such a great job of doing that, and because of that, you're seeing, Serginho Dest, you're seeing, Yunus Musa, you're seeing guys like Efra, who was called into that camp versus El Salvador. So it makes sense, but there's still a long way to go, man.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Plenty of room for improvement. Gordo didn't even have options at girlfriends at 15, and these kids are.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did. Buddy, you have no idea. No, it's been really cool, Herc. I mean, when I knew you, going back to when we were both young, you were, I don't even know if I can say this, but you were the whitest Mexican I've ever met,
I don't think you could say that,
and then to see you go, to Mexico, it's kind of like you discovered your roots, and then, I see you speaking Spanish online all the time. And I'm like, I didn't even know Herc could speak Spanish. But now you're truly multicultural, and you represent very well. So
Herc, let me ask you a little bit about your career, because I remember back in the day, and the first time I think I had heard about you, you were kind of bursting on the scene with the Galaxy. But I remember a long time ago looking up your career and seeing that you even played for the San Diego Gauchos, which was a PDL team, Superman, and then loaned out to the Sockers
USL
at one point. Oh, they were USL. Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
jeez.
They were USL.
Yeah, I just want to talk about your path a little bit. I just felt like there must have been a lot of years where you just kind of grinded it out. I mean, years where maybe you were written off, that you just kept going, kept chugging along, and then you kind of had that second breakthrough in Mexico. Just kind of touch on that. What was your mentality during this time?
So at a high school, I went to a high school in Vegas called Las Vegas High. Bryce Harper went to that high school. Your girlfriend went to that high school.
My wife, Destiny.
Oh, your wife. I'm sorry.
Wild
your girlfriend went to
right?
another high school. Yeah.
Not his girlfriend. Not his girlfriend.
Sorry. Correct. The Las Vegas Wildcats.
Yeah.
And you know what? Soccer in Southern Nevada wasn't a hotbed. I remember from the time I was 13, 14 years old, we'd have to play two age groups up just to find, decent competition and enough teams to play against. So a little bit of that helped us. A lot of that did not help us. We're playing against grown men and it's not a good thing. But in the long run, it helped. It just didn't help me personally finding a university. I didn't have UNLV knocking. I didn't have schools anywhere, not even a Yavapai, a school like that knocking. So it was, it wasn't like I had any type of option. So, I had to look abroad. I went down to Mexico and I was trying out for this team called Pachuca, who at the time was first division, and they just won their first championship in their team's history. And it was a humble club, and they had what was looked like a little warehouse, like a mini warehouse with bunk beds on each side of the wall. Must have been 40 beds. And they had showers, a mini little cafeteria and 3 fields. And this is where the teams would train, and it's second division and third division. I went and tried out for the third division team, and it was just a shit show. It wasn't good. It wasn't a great setup. It was very much a cultural shock for me. You know, I'd never been in Pachuca. Pachuca is like a coal mining town. There's nothing going on. It's underdeveloped. I'm like, where did I come from? I'm a Vegas kid.
Herc, were you with the Rapids when me and Keel and Colin Clark went down to Pachuca?
Yes, and you guys went to the circus. I told you not to go out, and you went to a circus tent bar. I told you do not go out. That was still one of my favorite preseasons, by the way, because we did Spain, we did Mexico, and we did Miami that preseason. Like MLS used to do this amazing preseason. It was Clavijo.
They still do. They still do. They go to like Tucson and Casa Grande.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But you don't understand what this was. It was like the worst thing in the world. And I didn't have a Mexican passport. So like, listen, guy, we're not going to sign you as a foreigner. Thanks for coming. But there was somebody who saw me there from Cruz Azul. And he's like, why don't you come in? You know, they're doing a bunch of tryouts. And he's like, I could make it so they can put you up. They'll put you up in Casa Club, which is a clubhouse. You will train, you will eat, sleep, and train with them, and they'll make a decision. And, you know, I did like 3 weeks, and the coach sat me down. He's like, listen, I like you, but I can't make a decision until the transfer window opens, but we'd like you to stay training. So I stayed training for like 4 months. And it was a great setup. Cruz Azul is an amazing club. But as other guys would come in and do the kind of the same training path, they'd be going elsewhere, because the way Mexican football is structured, there was different transfer windows for like second division affiliate teams and second division teams with, you know, a right to ascend back then. So nothing to do with the first division clubs. And there was a tryout in Puebla, and they were like, let's go. And I was like, you know what? Things aren't happening here in Cruz Azul. I'm tired of waiting. I went, and I ended up getting signed. And I still have my contract. It's somewhere around here, but it was a month, 400 pesos, which is in today's dollar amount would be $20, $20 a month. But they provide me housing and food, and I would play.
An MLS developmental contract.
Which I did. Trust me, man. I was a team MVP on a developmental contract. On a double MLS Cup and Open Cup.
Like my 11th year in the league.
Yeah.
Oh,
raise your hand if you were on developmental.
Look at Sal.
I was close. I didn't come to the MLS till 2010.
I will one up you guys. Not only was I a developmental contract, but I did developmental and senior developmental contract.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got a big raise. I went from junior developmental to mid-level developmental to senior developmental.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
it was through that pain.
Yeah, I did that for about a season, and it was just, I was like, man, this is going nowhere. Came back to the States, and on my last leg, I'm like, nah, I'm done. A buddy of mine, let's go try out for this team. I saw something, a flyer while I was in San Diego, and I was like, what? Went down, tried out. Honestly, in true Gaucho fashion, it was like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. They had 2 fields and like 500 players, and it was really smart what they did. They did fitness testing first, and they weed out all the people. So they'd be like, you're not fit enough. Thanks for your registration fee. And they'd collect the cash and keep out moving players. Yeah.
That is
so smart. They made their money. They called me back. Called me back. Right. And ended up signing and playing with them that season. Scored some goals. One of the actual exhibition games, like maybe our 3rd game into the season, was against the Galaxy. We had done like an affiliate deal with them. So we went down to the Rose Bowl. We got smashed so bad. It was like 9-1. Matt Reese dropped like 2 goals on us. He was playing in the field.
No.
Dude, Reese's good with his feet. Don't sleep on.
No. He is good, but I'm just.
No, he's really good with his feet.
Herc. Don't qualify that, dude.
Yeah. What do you want me to say, man? He dropped like 2 on us. I dropped 1 on Hartman though. They took notice. I was 19 years old. Ralph Perez was the coach at the time. So it just kind of happened.
Did you not pull out a Superman cape after you scored every goal at the Gauchos?
It was not a cape.
What was it, a mask?
It was a T-shirt with the Superman logo. Don't say it was a cape.
I could see you pulling the cape.
Oh my God. It was not a cape. But yeah, man, it just, I got lucky. Because honestly, you guys know what it was like. Gordo, your rookie year, how old were the rookies with you? They were like 22, 23 years old. And in world's footballing terms, Sal, you've been abroad. That's a little late. You know, that's not the prime age to be developing young players. So I was 19 years old. And I'll tell you what, I don't think Gordo saw this part of my development, but 19 years old on a team with Carlos Reese, Mauricio Cienfuegos, Kobe Jones, Gavin Glinton, like all these young players coming through that were really good. Bunch of UCLA picks because Siggy loved them.
That was a stacked squad, dude.
It was stacked, but it was so stacked, and we didn't have kind of reserve system that only certain players got to train. Yeah. So as a 19-year-old, I'm like doing laps around the field while these guys are training, and my training starts when training ends. That's when it's like, all right, bring on the kid. And I would cross the ball for Carlos Reese, last 15, 20 minutes of training session, do things like that. I would be a training dummy for like the defenders, you know, for Danny Califf's elbows, you know, in the back of my head. So, you know, that's just the way it was back then.
Yeah, that's true, man. Yeah, it was weird. So my rookie year, I remember in 04, we were doing the 40-yard dash, and you popped your hammy. You remember that?
I did my hammy bad.
It was the first time. It was the first run.
First time I've ever hurt myself. It was nuts.
And you popped it, and Ziggy still picked you over me. And he was like, all right, you're out of here. Yeah, we'll take him with half a hammy.
No, that's not true. That's false.
Also
that's
beat you in a race with one leg. So
yeah, that is false, by the way. I actually was cut that preseason. He's like, listen, you're injured. You can't prove, you know, you can play right now. I got to go with somebody who's healthy. So I'm not picking you as a developmental. Yeah. So I actually went, I think you went to Portland, and you went to A-League, and I went to D3.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Who'd you
that
play
year
for
I played
there?
Gauchos again and finished the season with them, and ended up playing indoor with the San Diego Sockers. And the funny thing about the indoor team is, Sal, you know what the Sockers are like in San Diego. That's a popular team.
Huge. Yeah. They actually just won their 15th championship.
That's a popular team. Yeah. They play in this arena on Mission Beach. Yeah. It's like great location. The fan base is huge. But it's indoor soccer, and indoor soccer is like a strange beast. And to play it professionally was just like a whirlwind. It's 1,000 miles per hour.
Who was your coach at the time? Was it Brian Quinn?
Brian Quinn.
It was
Brian Quinn, man.
Did you play with the guy? Do you remember a guy, Anthony Faraci, on that team?
Yes, I remember Faraci.
He married my cousin, so we're like basically cousins.
Hey, keep it in the family.
Hey, Faraci,
keep it in the family.
I'm telling you what, it was nuts. Here's a crazy thing, Sal. That team lasted 10 games. So 10 games into the season, this institution in what is indoor soccer gets bought out by this company with penny stock. And I'm talking about, like, if you guys watch The Wolf of Wall Street, that type of penny stock.
No way.
So when everything goes under, the team gets taken away. It goes bankrupt in that season. The players get dissolved into, you know, they go to whatever teams, you know, and I'm like, you know, back on the streets, so to say. I'm back on my parents' couch, you know, in Vegas. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? You know, it's just one of those things where I'm literally looking up information because all my buddies are teachers. All my buddies. Gordo, you know a lot of my buddies. Gargs, I think you met my buddy Boog as well. Like the whole crew, teachers. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, easiest thing to do is go back to school, get a teacher's credential. That's what I'll do, and I'll go coach because that's what I know. That's what my friends do. And while I'm trying to do that, literally looking up information and whatnot, training at a 24-hour, you know, fitness by myself.
You were yoked, by the way.
Dude, I tell you what, there have been
the biggest pecs for somebody that weighed 150 pounds I've ever seen.
This guy came in, he was like he was trying to like win a bodybuilding.
Dude, that's all I did, Gordo. All I did was work out, and I didn't play soccer, so it would just be working out. You know, it's easy to get fit right now if you think about it. The hardest thing for us was that we would play soccer, so you'd get like skinny really quick.
Right.
But dude, it got to the point where Ralph Perez called me again, and he told me that he can get me an opportunity with Steve Sampson, and I'm over it. I'm like, nah, man, I don't know. I'm not about it. Then, you know, and he's like literally pleading with me not to be an idiot. Just go check it out. And I went, and I remember I got there. You guys were already maybe mid-swing in preseason when I got there, Gordo. And it was like one of the worst days I've had physically in my life. I was just like beat, like first 5 minutes, blisters on my feet. I haven't touched a soccer ball. My feet haven't felt what it is to be the impact be on the field. And man, I just remember how hard that first week was. And it was kind of like the same thing, the year before. It reminded me of when I was 19. It was like, you'll get a run when the scrubs get a run, when the scabs get a run kind of deal. And slowly but surely, I started kind of working my way. Gordo was actually the man that preseason. Like, I think, Gordo, you were 22 years old and you were, because they just traded Carlos and you were pegged to be, I think, the
22-year-old freshman, right, Gordo?
That's right. I had them all fooled, and they wanted me to start. I had a good season in the A-League, and then I popped my hip, and I had hip surgery, and then opened the door for Herc, and Herc just never stopped from that moment on. He just couldn't anything. I mean, it was the Herc show, man. It was unbelievable to watch him that season. We won the championship. It was literally incredible. Herc was shooting from half field, and we were like, "It's going in." We're on the bench, and it'd just be like knuckling, and the goalie would be like, "Oh," and it would go in.
Herc. Another thing I remember, I played with Jack Jewsbury in Portland, and
good guy.
I don't know.
Good
I don't
man.
remember how it got brought up, but he was talking about you, and he had mentioned that, like, I think it was a time when you started scoring a ton of goals when you went, after you left Kansas City, went to Mexico, right? But
yeah.
So your name was kind of popping up, and then everyone's like, wasn't he in Kansas City? Like, why wasn't he playing, blah, blah, blah? And Jack was like, I don't know. Peter just didn't really, take a liking to him, whatever. He's like, but this dude had the hardest shot. He just could kick the ball so hard. And I remember it stuck in my head that, like, you just had the hardest shot.
I'm going to be honest.
That's why his knee, he can't move his knee because he would rip like 90 shots without warming up. And Herc could kick it like the full length of the soccer field.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to do it without warming up. I used to try hitting the crossbar from like beyond midfield before like warming up all the time. Do you remember Steve Sanson saying he would find me if I got injured? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I got a funny Steve Sanson fine story I'll tell you right now after this. But that right there,
when
that
gave
to
him
me,
all the pennies.
Yes, that's the one. That's
Tell
the
us.
one. All right, I'll tell you really quickly. But before that, kicking the ball hard, it's a technique, like, honestly, and people don't give it enough credit for, that I'm extremely proud of. My dad to this day still, stakes claim to that. But I've only met one person where I like, that guy kicks it harder. Honestly.
And who's that?
One guy, Dario Benedetto. He plays right now in Olympique de Lyon, in the French league. He's an Argentine international. He did his knee before the last World Cup, or he would have gone. He was my teammate in Tijuana in Cholos Quincles. He played for America as well. The guy he is a baller, but hits it so hard. The only man I've ever met in my life where I'm like, all right, this is gonna. Yeah, this doesn't feel good. Like,
the only other guy I could see, I saw that could smoke a ball like you, Herc, was Clint. Clint could absolutely
Mathis
smash a ball. Clint Mathis.
Yeah. I've heard the same. I've heard Jason Christ as well. I've heard that from people.
I never trained with Mathis, and I caught, with Christ, and I caught Mathis at the end of his career. But he could absolutely smoke a ball. I mean,
Zach Thornton won the All-Star kick at the hardest.
Yeah, no, Zach can hit a ball.
100.
Oh yeah. No, I believe that.
He put that
by
big
the way,
booty behind it. And
I invited Zach over to my house one time for carne asada and margaritas. Cleaned me out.
Yeah. Dude, once Zach walked
first
in the door, you were done. It was over. Good night. See you later.
Yeah. So what Gordo was talking about, the pennies. This is the 2005 year is one of my favorite years on earth. Not so much for the success that I had, like, personally, but for the team in general. Like, our fantasy football league that year were all Steve Sampson quotes.
Yeah,
it was hilarious. Everything was just so funny. Everything was just like a comedy act. Everything was like made for reality TV. And I remember one day I am shitting my pants. I wake up and I was living out here in the South Bay. And I think my then girlfriend, I spent the night at her house, and I woke up late the next day. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be late for training. And I'm like speeding through from like what is the South Bay to Carson. It's the worst feeling in the world when you're pulling up with your car and you can see the team already warming up.
Everybody has that sinking heart feeling.
Oh my God. I want to die. I want to just crawl somewhere and die.
You're just hoping and praying that, like, they called a meeting and there's something else going on and the session hasn't happened yet.
Dude, I wanted to really just literally die, and I could see some guys on the team know it's my car and waving. Like it's like your buddy's already like rubbing it in. I'm like, oh man, I get there. I'm not the only person who's late that day. Tyrone Marshall's late. Mind you, I'm making
traffic.
Yeah, traffic coach, exactly. Great guy, by the way. Mind you, I'm making senior developmental, so it's like $12.50 a month, right? To live in California, which is not a fun thing. Tyrone making like 200 comes in way later than me, and the coach goes, "There's gonna be some fines, gentlemen," and I'm like, "Oh man!" And I'm thinking in my head, "Well, I'll get fined something. Tyrone will get fined something." He fined both of us. What was it, like $150? And it wasn't so much like the actual fine of $150. I couldn't believe I got to find the same amount as somebody who makes like 200 times like 100 times what I make. I'm like, how is this fair? I'm a senior developmental, and he wouldn't budge. So me being the smart ass that I am, I go get $150 in pennies from the bank, and I come in and roll it into Steve Sanson's desk. Boom. And Steve just gives me the,
Yeah.
okay, Mr. Gomez. Okay. like the well played.
You got me. You got me.
Oh my God. I was going to ask you why you had such a roller coaster career all over the different clubs, but I think you just answered that for us, Herc.
Dude, that's it.
Me waking up late.
No, throwing pennies on your coach's desk when he tried to find you.
No, you know what it is? I wish my development was better. I don't know about Gordo, because I honestly thought Gordo was Gordo had the bad luck of being injury prone the first half of his career. And I think he realized later what it took to keep his body, in sync with his mind. So he could perform. I had trouble keeping in like the ball in sync with my mind of what it wanted me to do, what I wanted it to do. Cause my development was later. Now I see kids when I went to Mexico, I see kids who are like 12, 13, 14 years old who are technically far more developed than I was in my early 20s. It's insane. 100%. Yeah. And Sal, I'm sure when you went abroad, you've seen this as well. Like it's just part of the culture. And it made me realize how far I was in that sense. Because when I said, if Chicharito isn't scoring goals, he's not doing much for you. Oftentimes in my career, I felt like that player. I felt like I needed to be smart enough to put myself in certain positions to score a goal, or I wasn't going to help my team, build out the back.
That's a lot of pressure, man, to have that, to go into every game, like knowing, hey, if I don't score a goal in this game, I had a bad game. That's a lot of pressure to have.
That's why guys like Wando, and what they do is amazing, because Wando's not a guy that I'm going to say is great at anything besides scoring goals. And that's an amazing thing to do. That's an amazing talent, but he's not fast. He's not overly technical. He's not overly crafty with the ball at his feet like a dribbler, but he's got the Gerard Mueller, part of his game where he's instinctive. He knows where the ball is going to end up. He knows where to kind of drift, where to play the ball so you can get it back. He's just such a great goal scorer. But there are a lot of us who don't have those traits, who don't have, silky feet, who our job are just finishers. And, I was very much one of those players towards the beginning of my career.
Yeah. When did it get easy for you, Herc? Because I'm
still waiting.
Well, I mean, that's not true, dude. You had a phenomenal career and you performed in a lot of different places.
On paper. Because I've got stats.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit here
either. No.
That's true.
I know what you're saying, Greg. I know what you're saying, Gargs, but think about it this way. I won a goal scoring title in Mexico, tied with Chicharito Hernandez. And I started 5 games. So I always felt consistency was my biggest problem.
What you just said is an incredible skill. To put the ball in the back of the net is why players get paid astronomical sums. Gordo and I got into this argument one time. I think it was in Toronto, actually. And we were arguing about who has more pressure on them, forwards to score goals in a game, to come in and score a goal, or defenders to keep the ball out of the back of the net. And we were, literally, it was.
Who said what?
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So I think that, Gordo, I may be wrong about this and correct me if I am wrong, but I thought that you had said in your past in our maybe in our locker room after San Jose, maybe it was Galaxy, you characterize Wando as the best pure finisher inside the box that you've been around. Is that accurate or is that inaccurate?
Yes, 1,000%.
It's hard to argue not, right?
And
Yeah,
it is an
is.
incredible skill. And I also think that and I've never really been a goal scorer outside of my high school career, which I was a phenomenal goal scorer in my high school career. But it is something that I think it comes in waves, right? And I'd be interested to hear how you guys pick up that pressure or picked it up and put it down, but also when you feel it, because I think scoring goals is something that is almost a feeling. Like the goal gets big, you start to just see things, and it's almost like just a natural reaction as opposed to you overthinking it, which is almost what I feel like Chicharito was doing. Granted, he was overweight and out of shape and not committed last year, and he looks the exact opposite this year. But talk a little bit about when did that goal get big? At what point in the maturation process? Because you went through an awful lot there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is instinct. Like you're going to be in that position enough times where it's like second nature. But if I'm being honest, it's confidence. Like no matter how good you are, if you're not confident, you're not going to play well. And oftentimes I'd be thrown. I still remember my first goal. My first goal, we're playing against the Metro Stars when the Metro Stars were still around. And I forgot why whoever was going to start this day didn't start. But the night before in New Jersey, I went out with a buddy. And I didn't go out and get crazy, but we now, had dinner, had like a drink or two, nothing crazy. But it's not in my mind that I'm going to play the next day. Play, let alone start. That morning in activation, Samo comes up to me. I think it might have been Billy Nickel came up to me and was like, hey, Herc, you're gonna get the go, son. And I'm thinking to myself, what? Like I didn't have.
No, I don't want that.
And I'm like, what?
Take it back. You can keep it. I'm good.
It was actually a midfielder that didn't play because I played on the right that day. And he's like, yeah, you're gonna get the go. Just go over there. And he's like, just do your best. And remember, it was Stevie Nickel because he would tell me, not Stevie Nickel, Billy Nickel. He would tell me, or was it Mick Nickel?
Mick Nickel.
Thank you, sir. Billy McNichol, awesome guy. Awesome, like really just quality quotes. He told me, listen, man, if you're ever in a position where you don't know what to do, just kick it in the back of the net. And he would always
you would say something like that.
A little icebreaker. But I remember I was in a position where ball gets played by Paulo Nagamura out wide. I take a bad touch because it's like this weird AstroTurf, and it pops up on me. Defender's closing down. I don't have enough time to think. So I just go laces through it, kind of like sideswiped it, and I'm the chakras. You're going, hard and across the face of goal. And before I know it, the ball kind of turns around and keeps dipping, hits the base of the post, and goes in. And it was like one of those things where you had to do a double take. But as soon as it went in, I still remember that feeling, not only that night, the next day, but the rest of the week. Yeah. It just felt like I was loose. Yeah, exactly. It just felt like you're loose. Like you can do no wrong until the next game. And then before I knew it, one goal turned into two goals turned into a start against Real Madrid on a Monday, and then cameo against Chivas, coming off the bench and scoring 2 goals. It just kept adding up. And the more it adds up, the more you feel like you can't do wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
Gordo, was there a moment when you would characterize yourself as having that confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the toughest thing about being a goal scorer is, it's so hard to get that confidence, and to keep it rolling, but once you do, if you figure it out, it's really about, for me, it was about failing first, because you fail so much as a striker because it's so hard to put the ball in the back of the net that I had to get comfortable with failing. And at first I was holding myself back because I didn't like failing anymore, so I almost didn't want to get in those opportunities until I said, screw it. I don't care if people boo me. I'm going for it. And as soon as I let that go, and I was like, okay, I'm willing to fail. Like I will take that PK or whatever, and I'll get in that position. And I want to be there in the dying moments. And if I miss this, then they're going to boo me. But if I make it, you change your mindset. And that's what did it for me. I wasn't scared to take the chance.
Yeah. I do have a question for Gardo, because I never embraced the super sub role. I hated it. I hated being labeled that. And you, throughout your career, had scored some big goals in dying moments. Like game tying goals, game winning goals. I still remember that. I think it was 2012 season with San Jose that you guys had. It was just like ridiculous, like one after the other. I don't know how they scraped the 3 points.
Every time the 90th minute happened, it would just be like a tie or a win, either way. Yeah.
So how did you deal with going into that psyche? Like, all right, this is my role. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it well.
Because I had no other choice. I remember we all wanted to be starters, you know, and at some point, you know, I remember having my first kid. It was 2010, right? And I became a father, and it became real for me. It was like, okay, that was kind of like my make or break moment. I really wasn't enjoying soccer up until that point. You know, I just did it. It was a job, but then my kids like gave me that love for it. And I knew that I had to go out there and be a man and earn money. That's what it was about. It was like, I wanted to go and be the best that I could be for my kids. It changed everything for me. It really did. And, you know, and if I wasn't going to be the starter, I had to add value. So I was like, okay, if I get 10 minutes today, and I would think this on the field, I'm going to either go and get a yellow card and like hurt somebody and affect it, or I'm going to score a goal. Like I was going out there to cause something to where somebody was going to notice me, that I could keep my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it was for me.
I remember a moment, Gordo, and I don't know if you might not remember this. We were in preseason. I was at the Fire, which was, what year was that? 2011 and 12. You must have been with San Jose early, I think. What year were you in San Jose? Early.
2011 is when I got traded, late.
When you were getting traded there, yeah. Because we were in preseason in Santa Barbara, and you walked into the hotel lobby, and I hadn't seen you in a while. And you walked into the hotel lobby, and you were ripped, like shredded. And I'd never seen you like that, because you were never like that. And all of a sudden, and I was like, where did you come from? Who is this guy? And there was a different confidence about you. And then from there on, that was the moment for me where I kept seeing you score goals. You were in Toronto scoring goals at the death, and you were the man. Then in San Jose, the Goonies, that was one of the wildest teams to play against and watch you guys, the dynamic between you and Lenny and Wando. I mean, it was insane. And it was insane playing against you, because the confidence between all three of you, which bled through the rest of the team, but there was no losing. It wasn't happening. The belief was so deep that you guys were going to score a goal or break a leg, one or the other. And it could have been your own
Ash
leg.
Brothers.
Like, who knows?
Ash Brothers.
That's right. I remember that.
Cringing.
See, I never embraced that. And I think that was part of the reason, like, it ate at me. That's especially
crazy
when
that
I went.
You didn't, because you were so good at it, dude. Like you said, you started 5
I didn't want to
goals and
be.
you led the,
you know. No, I mean,
you didn't want to.
I didn't want to be like pigeonholed,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was tough. That's a hard thing. If you don't want to be it, it's.
But you probably played that year with such a huge chip on your shoulder that you wanted to prove that coach wrong every time you got onto the field.
You know what? It was weird, Gordo, because I literally had a situation where, and I'm over it now, and I've spoken to Peter about it, but literally Peter Vermes in Kansas City, Wiz at the time, we were negotiating a contract, and I was going to sign 4 years for like 140, 160, and go up there until like, I think my last year was like 220.
Which, by the way, that was a good salary.
It was decent back then. It was decent. Yeah. National team players were on that back then, were like fringe national team players. It was decent salary, decent salary today, for people listen to us, but it went from that situation to me tearing my knee, like the first week of preseason. And then me kind of like not playing. It was like Kurt Onalfo got let go. The GM becomes a coach. I'm not fit. He's like, you know what? Even though you're now fit, you're not of my liking. It goes from, here's the negotiations. My agent, Richard Moskins, is like, I'm getting no calls. I'm getting like nothing back, no responses, to final offer, $70,000 a year, take it or leave it for the next 4 years. Like no scaling, no nothing. And I was like, wow. And I had been at that point, MLS vets, made a national team debut, Copa America, won multiple MLS Cups, won an Open Cup, was a team MVP, scored the first goal in a stadium's history. Like I thought, like I had a little like cachet, like a little name to myself. And when you get that, it's like, it's sobering, man. It is sobering. You're like, wow, like where do I go from here? Like this is, I'm driving a Saturn Ion. It's not even an Ion anymore. The O fell off in a trip from Vegas to Kansas City when I'm moving my stuff. I'm like, well, what am I doing? Like, what's going on with my life? No, sorry, Rich. I'm not gonna do it. Yeah, and I had this opportunity to Puebla. They go, it's a 6-month contract, take it or leave it. It's not much money. And I went with I've got nothing else. And when the opportunity arose, and when I saw, it was just such a culture shock, like being in first division in Mexico, because even though I'm at a humble club, but I'm realizing like the value of the sport. We're getting paid in cash net. And I think when they were late, like 2 months to pay some of the guys. So when we finally got paid, they were like, listen, the young guys and the guys who don't get paid as much going on a Monday, Tuesday, the rest of the guys, Wednesday, the guys who are like, the heavy hitters. And Carlos Reese was on my team in Puebla. And I remember I went on a Monday and I started looking around, and I'm with like the academy kids who are like now first team players, still in their first contracts. I don't make anything of it. I leave with my envelope. I must have not signed something properly, because that Wednesday they called me back to go sign what I missed, in the tax forms. So as I'm waiting, I see guys coming out with like huge manila envelope, like, and I'm like, what is going on? These guys are like, and by this point I'm like 5 goals in, to the season. I'm like, what's going on? I start really realizing the amount of money that's like in soccer, and it kind of lights a fire underneath. Like, dude, this could be a profession. Like this could be something, life-changing for you. And it just kind of takes a life of its own. And that year, 2010, I mean, this goes to show you how little I made as a footballer, but in that 7-8 month span, where there's one season ends, the World Cup happens, and another season begins, and I get transferred and a new contract, I made more money net than I ever did in my life gross, as a footballer in MLS. It just goes to show you like what I wasn't making in Major League Soccer,
we ran into each other when you were at Santos, Herc, and on the field. And that was a moment where I felt similar to what I saw in Gordo. I saw that in you. It's a different persona. And
I remember seeing
Sal,
that.
you can probably comment on this. When you come across forwards, you either know that you can eat their lunch, or you know that it's going to be a long day, and you know it as soon as you can see their eyes. It's something like they can't hide it.
Yeah,
and
they have like this. They have this pregnancy glow, like about them.
Dude, it's incredible. It's wild, man. There's just this. It's like the aura, and it's like Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry had it everywhere at all times. Dude, it's wild.
Crazy, Gargs.
You can see it in these forwards, and you had it, and it was something. It was like it was all over you, and it's like, oh my god, dude, he's a different guy.
Gordo said something right now that kind of resonated a little bit ago when he was talking about what changed in him. And, he saw it like he needed to do it because it was his job. When I went to Mexico, I got put in positions where I go to a new team and they buy me. It's an actual transfer. Mm-hmm. So here's a team, like, we're going to buy you from another team and then pay you to come play for us. So I immediately go in all innocent and, kind of doe-eyed, and I think this is like the greatest thing on earth. And your teammates don't talk to you. They won't pass you the ball, because you're taking one of their friends, one of their like brothers' position, which means you're taking food off the table for their family, which means it's not just their family, it's who they're, kind of working for. And I found this like all the time in every single club that I went to. And it was the same thing, not only for me, but it's a very cutthroat. So I go in now with this dog eat dog mentality where, I got to be just as cutthroat in my play and worry about what I got to do. So my whole time in Mexico, and this is a reason for me moving around as much, I was like, I've got a very small window to maximize my potential, and make as much as I can and go to the next, because I was 27 years old, didn't make any money. At 27 years old, I started kind of get a little taste. And I was like, if I want this to last, I got to be smart about it. So it's like this opportunity came about, and I was my own agent, for majority of my time in Mexico, it was like, all right, what can we do? How can I get a better contract? And the club would come to me. This team is interested because they're willing and able to do these transfers as well.
They're in business, right? I mean, they're in the business too. And at some point that moving around, Herc, I think that you hit on the head. I moved around a bunch. Herc, Gordo, you moved around a bunch. Sal, you've been Mr. Consistency in a lot of different places, which is also a great thing to have that security. But at some point, it gets you. It's empowering, and you finally see that there's value in you, and that once you know that. It's easy to walk into another locker room, and it's easy to walk in and find your spot instantly, right? And then own the room and also own your credibility within your team. And then all of a sudden it's this, okay, if it ain't good here, I'll go to the next one. And I'm gonna do the same thing, and I'm gonna score goals, and I'm gonna earn my spot, and I'm gonna get back into it. And I think that changes. Once it changes for you, there's no going back the other way.
Yeah, but it's jarring as well, man. Like we've all heard the act like you've been there, we've all heard that, in our playing careers, act like you've been there.
You still got to do it, right? You don't have a choice.
Let's move this along. So we've had you for a little over an hour. Let's get the plead the fifth questions. I don't know if you've ever listened to one of our pods, Herculez, but basically Gordo is going to read 5 questions to you. You have to answer all of them, but you can plead the fifth on one of them.
Okay.
If you answer all 5, you can then ask us a question that we must answer.
Each one of you guys?
Yeah, you can kind of just give a broad question that we all have to answer.
Perfect. All right, let's go.
I got to change up these answers are not hard enough. Based on our last show where Grant put me in a tough spot. All right, I'm just gonna say that these are way too easy.
Dude, Grant Wall put Gordo in a body bag, just zipped him up.
Oh God, Gordo. That's the thing. Gordo, Sal, I don't know you well enough, but Dan, Gordo, and I could easily bury each other. We know each other's.
No one on here knows anything about me, so I'm good.
Good. All right, better league right now, MLS or Liga MX?
Liga MX.
Okay.
If we're talking level,
Layup. We're starting easy.
All right. Who wins World Cup first, US or Mex?
I think the US. Yeah. And if you'd like me to elaborate on that, just
I want to hear a little bit about that. Just the youth.
Yeah. And Mexico's got a weird situation where they overinflate their market and they overvalue their domestic product, and it's very difficult for these young, very good footballers because Mexico at the youth level is like a world power, but they don't want to partake in the world market, so they don't sell these players abroad. And when they do, they're asking like Pizarro, who's in Miami right now, they wanted 20 million for him. That's not going to happen. 26-year-old, 20 million. It's only playing in Liga MX. So they got an overinflated market, and they don't think they need to change that. So if that doesn't change, they don't get more players abroad to kind of sharpen those irons, and the US does. It's just simple math.
Herc, why do you think Mexican players don't play more in Major League Soccer, and why don't Mexican clubs put Mexican players in Major League Soccer?
It's a price tag, right? Or no?
Yeah, I think the pathway for.
I mean, why don't they put them in just to showcase them and put them in the windowsill?
Easy answer to why there are no loans is because they're not going to make much money off of a loan, and it's business. The also easy answer is the pathway. It's much easier to get to Major League Soccer once you're away from Liga MX. Especially for these national team players, because now they've got this cachet, they've got this shine of what is the Mexican national team, which is a huge hype machine. Like marketing is insane with these players. And it's much more attractive for these guys to then come to Major League Soccer because they're going to make money they won't make elsewhere. And they'll be away from the Mexican press. It's not the same press here in the States as they have in Mexico. I'll tell you what, it is insane. There was one moment where I felt like I was one of the Beals in Torreon and Santos. I go do an autograph session at the Puma store because I was our official team sponsor, and we had security leading us there. But as soon as we're done, it was like, security bounce. All right, let's go. It was a mall filled of people who were there to see me, Mark Rosas, and Oribe Peralta. And we literally had to run to our cars, and we're being mobbed by people. Like it's all they have there. So it's just, they want to get away from that. They want to get away from the feeling of always being seen, of not being normal. And the U.S. gives them the perfect, kind of situation for that. So I think that's why we see it more on the latter years when they feel like they're overwhelmed with that.
I got a quick question, Herc, and you may know the answer to this. MLS hasn't been shy that their goal is to be the best league in North America, and they've kind of stated this, and they've always kind of wanted to be better than the Mexican league. Does Mexico have that same kind of, I don't know, goal in mind with the MLS? Are they just consistently trying to be a better league than the MLS, or do you think they're just kind of going on, not really thinking about it?
I think they're not thinking about it because the train of thought is they're already better. They're not trying to be better. They're already better in their eyes.
And they don't see them passing them anytime soon.
And they don't see them passing them anytime soon, whether it's national team or it's MLS as a league, a domestic league. They're not worried about it. And it's an air of confidence and arrogance that they have. But they have it towards a lot of, it's funny because it's a lot of money in Liga MX, and they could be top. There are a lot of pundits that would argue it's top 10 in the world. I think it's scraping that 9, 10, 11, 12. You can nitpick, but they definitely have confidence in what they have in their product.
Good answer. All right. So rank these former soccer players turned analysts. Stu Holden, Alexi Lawless, Taylor Twellman, Winalda, Dan Gargan, and let's throw yourself in there. Let's brag.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Let's brag a little bit. So
I plead the fifth.
Guys. Dude, no, you can't.
He does not want you to for this one.
That's the only good question in this whole dang thing.
Oh, busy. Dave Chappelle voice.
Do we have
right
a
here.
rebuttal for this? We got to come up with a rebuttal. We can't let him get off that. All right. Screw you, Herc. All right.
This is where we expected you to think on your feet, Gordo.
Huh?
I said this is where we expected you to think on your feet, but that's our mistake.
No, I'm not smart enough. I mean, Grant Wall, he put my brain into a pretzel. Okay. LA Galaxy or Seattle Sounders. Who's your club?
Who's my
Seattle
club?
Or LA? Who do you represent?
It's funny because I always get asked, like, who's my club? I'm sure you guys do as well because you've played for so many clubs. Like, who's your club? Who's the club? And I don't really have a club. They all let me go at some point, But I did enjoy, and I do enjoy to this day what the Seattle Sounders are about.
Do you? That's
very
surprising
much so.
to me. You've won a championship. Or did you win one with both?
Yes, sir.
With both.
You did.
Yeah. So the quick story, when I was playing with Santos and we would play them in CONCACAF Champions League, Chris Henderson, who's now the sporting director at Inter, would always come up and talk to me. I know Chris Henderson because his brother played with me at the Sounders when I got loaned out A-League, like back in 2003, I believe. Anyways, before the games, he would come up and talk to me and ask me. He was the only person to ever ask me, while I'm still an active player, I'm like 29 years old, what do you think you're going to do after you play? And it got like me thinking. And the next time because we face him like every year,
you guys did.
Yeah, he would ask, I finally came up to him, I know what I want to do. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I kind of want to do what you do. He goes, I'll tell you what, in your off season, if you really want to do this, call me. We'll bring you down. You shadow me for a couple of weeks and see if it's what you want to do. And he's the only player that's ever opened up a platform like that to me or even offered it to me. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I thought he was like just the greatest guy. And I start working in TV and I start realizing what that job entails and what it really is. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with it right now.
So you never took him up on it?
No, I didn't. I've never took him up on it. And it just seems like it'd have to be the right opportunity for me to ever do anything like that. Cause you guys, I'm sure are like me. We've moved around so much that when you finally have stability, it has to be the right thing for you to actually break that stability.
For sure. I agree with that.
Why Seattle?
Why Seattle?
Yeah. Why the answer? Why do you pick Seattle?
They've just been so good to me, man. I had a pretty good string of games where I would score against Seattle and CONCACAF, Champions League. Their fans, like, it wasn't ribbing. It was just banter. It was good banter. And they always like treated me well. Adrian Hanover from when I played with him in A-League, was just like the nicest guy. Brian Schmetzer was the head coach back then, assistant coach with Siggy. It was just like such a great fit and need for what I was going through in that moment. And the city of Seattle just treated us well, my wife and I, and this is still a place that, we love.
How many years did you play there?
I played one. I played, well, seasons wise, I played 2 A-League. And then my last season was
last year of your career was in Seattle.
Correct. Last year.
You went out as a winner. I love that.
That's right.
All right. Last one, man. And you can't plead the fifth. So this is great news.
Yes.
This is great news for me. All right. Better teammate, me or Gargs?
Ooh, man.
Easy.
Teammates?
Hey, remember those old times, buddy?
Oh my God. No, because this is difficult, because I'm gonna be honest with people. Like, we had a crew in LA that was like our little get together on the weekends crew, and it was Gordo, Ned Gravoy, Josh Gardner, and then sprinkled in with the other players on our team. Gordo and Troy would be in there as well, but like we'd go out all the time. So this is what I'm saying. Like, we know each other's like
how much?
Yeah, exactly.
Gordo didn't
can't
know
stop
you
talking
spoke
about it.
Spanish until earlier in this podcast.
Why would he ever? Why would he ever need to know that from me? Like Gordo's never spoken Spanish to me, so how would he know? What would he be in a position to be like, oh, he speaks Spanish? But Gargs was the exact same for me in Colorado. Like, I remember being in an empty bar that's not supposed to be open, Republic, shout out to Republic, and it would just be Colorado Rapid players organized by Gargan. Like, Gargan was the ringleader of organizing the night outs in Colorado. So this is a difficult one. I'm gonna well, you're speaking to the choir. You're preaching to the choir. So I'm gonna go with who would protect me on the field, and that's the defender.
What?
Thank you very much.
Are you serious?
Just say it, Herc. Say the name, just so we're all clear.
Daniel Gargan.
Yes, sir.
This is why I know that he likes me more as a teammate, because whenever you pick the other guy, you would feel bad. He knows
that you could deal with it. He knows.
Can I tell you who was in this Colorado crew? You had Pablo Mastroianni, who would make a night out, and and it's like crazy because he's one of the veterans. You had Mike Pecky. You had Kyle Beckerman, who is one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. Kyle Beckerman, my last year was a strange year for me because I started working TV my last season. So I kind of got this weird feeling from guys, like whenever they were around me, things would get quiet. Like all the media members here in the locker room, get quiet, they'd be extremely nice to me, but even on the field and training sessions, right, exactly. Even on the field and the training sessions, they'd bite their lip when I knew they wanted to say something to me, right?
They'd be like, Herc's coming, be quiet.
Yeah,
well, even our rivals, our opponents, I could tell they wanted to say something and they would stop. Kyle Beckerman was like, fuck you fucking TV. Go, fucking TV right now. Fuck you, fucking TV. And he's like, what? And he was like the nicest guy to me in Colorado. And after the game, comes up and gives me a hug. But I still, to this day, think it's like the funniest thing. He'd be the only one to ever, go there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. 2 shits, man. That's good.
Yeah. KB loves talking shit.
I don't like that answer, but I guess I got to deal with it. Herc, it's been a pleasure to have you on, buddy.
Yeah,
good
Herc,
to talk
thanks,
to you.
man.
Good to catch up.
Really appreciate you being on, man.
What an incredible
I appreciate
story,
it, guys.
If you're ever back in San Diego, let me know.
Oh, all the time, man.
Yeah.
There's Tacos El Gordo. That's my spot.
Is it?
Oh,
we have
Street.
my family has some restaurants in Little Italy, so we'll go have dinner there.
Oh, don't just throw that out like it's no big deal.
Some restaurants.
The people on the pod are tired of hearing about it.
In prime real estate in San Diego, my family has a few.
It's no big deal.
You want to go to?
I will take you up on that.
You want to go to Mozzarelli's? We got them both.
Barbusa.
Herc, you're an absolute legend, brother. It's
thanks, guys. It's been fun, man.
Thanks for the time.
All right,
take care. Thank you, guys. Take care, guys.
Take care, bye,
big man.